If you have ever made a decision that felt completely clear and solid and like the obviously right call, but days or weeks later you look back and thought, oh, what the heck was I thinking? Then you're not alone. And this does not mean that you're bad at making decisions or anything like that. What happened is something research calls a confidence-competence gap. Your certainty was real, but it was not connected to reality. And the part that makes this dangerous, nothing in your experience told you anything was off. And this is what I study. I have a master's degree in applied neuroscience, and I am the founder of Applied Brain Lab, where I study how modern environments shape decision-making in ambitious professionals and business owners. And today I want to show you why your brain's confidence system and your brain's accuracy system are not exactly the same thing, and why they come apart at exactly the wrong moment. So let me set this up properly, because this is not just an interesting piece of psychology. This might just be one of the most practically and important things that you can learn about how your brain works for the workplace. So we tend to think of confidence as a signal, trustworthy, like a gauge on a dashboard. And when the needle is high, things are going well. And when it drops, something is wrong. And we trust that gauge. Of course we do. It's the only one we have. And because we do not walk around with an external monitor strapped to our head that says, decision quality 74.8% and falling. And we rely on how it feels. And most of the time that works well enough. But here is where it breaks down. Research by Shaker and Ranev, published in 2021, shows that the ability to tell the difference between your own correct and incorrect decision using confidence is in itself imperfect. And it gets worse the higher the confidence level. So the more sure you feel, the less reliable that feeling becomes as an indicator of whether you're actually right. Let me say this again. The more confident you are, the worse your confidence tracks reality. And this is not a personality flaw, and it's not arrogance. It's a structural limitation of how confidence is generated in the brain. Now, confidence is not a direct measurement of how good your decision is. It's a separate judgment constructed from cues like how fluently the information came to mind, how familiar the situation feels, and how consistent the story is that you're telling yourself. And none of those are cues. None of those cues are the same as accuracy. Bolt et al. In 2017 showed something that really drives this home. They found that evidence reliably influences confidence more than evidence strength does. So if the information coming in feels clean and consistent, your confidence goes up, even if that information is not actually strong. Your brain reads smoothness as truth, and it does this automatically. Let's think about that in a professional context. So you're in a meeting and someone presents data that confirms what you already suspected. And it flows, it makes sense, and it feels right. Your confidence in this direction locks in. But the reason it felt right might not be because it was actually correct. It might be because it felt familiar, because it matched a pattern that you have seen before. And maybe even just because the presentation was well made and clean. And your brain interpreted all of that smoothness as accuracy, when it actually was just fluency. Now here's where it gets really interesting for anyone who works in complex environments, which is basically all of us. When cognitive load increases, and by cognitive load I mean the total mental demand on your system from decisions, interruptions, time pressure, emotional weight, unresolved problems running in the background, and so on. When all of that builds up, two things happen at the same time. First, your decision quality drops. Your working memory gets crowded. Your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for evaluating, comparing, and holding multiple variables in mind, starts running on less. You process fewer options. You simplify without realizing you're simplifying. This part most people can intuitively understand, even if they've never read research on it before. But the second thing that happens is the one that actually causes the damage. Your ability to monitor your own performance also drops, and it drops for the same reason. Because monitoring error detection and confidence calibration all depend on the same limited cognitive resources that the primary task is already using up. Shea and Frith in 2019 described this beautifully. They argued that metacognitive functions depend on executive resources within what they call the global workspace. When those resources are strained by cognitive load, metacognitive accuracy deteriorates. In plain language, when your brain is busy thinking, it has less capacity left over to check whether the thinking is any good. Krigelson et al. In 2012 showed this at a neural level. Cognitive load literally alters error evaluation within the medial frontal cortex. The system that is supposed to flag mistakes, to wave the red flag and say, no, stop, check that again, that system gets quite under load. Not because there are fewer errors, but because the detection system has less power. And this is the part I really would like you to sit with, because this is a very hidden trap. De Waal, Baumeister, and Mazicampo in 2008 showed that logical reasoning depends on conscious processing resources. And when those resources are reduced, reasoning quality drops. But, and this is critical, the person keeps going, they keep responding, deciding, they keep on producing output. They just become less able to detect that the output has gotten worse. So from the outside and from the inside, everything looks normal. You're still in the meeting, still answering questions, making calls, and you still feel like you're on top of it. But the monitoring system that would normally catch a weak assumption or flag an incomplete evaluation or a notice that you skipped a variable, that system is running on fumes and it is not telling you. The call, and this is what I call invisible degradation. And I think this is one of the most underestimated risks in professional life. Not the obviously bad decisions that you make when you're exhausted at 1 a.m. in the morning and you know you're not thinking straight. That one you can catch, and that is one you can protect against. The dangerous one is the 2 in the afternoon decision that felt completely right. The one you made when you felt you were at full capacity, when you were clear, the one you felt absolutely confident about, because your brain did not send you an error message. It never does. And let me give you an example here, how this plays out. And this is not hypothetical. This pattern shows up in professionals where the consequences are very, very visible. Jaspan et al. In 2022 studied this in diagnostic radiology. Medical trainees making diagnostic calls, and they found exactly what research predicts. Confidence and competence are related but separable. Trainees can feel increasingly certain about their diagnosis while their actual accuracy improves less than expected or does not improve at all. The confidence curve and the competence curve are not the same line, and in medicine that gap can directly affect patient care. Now bring that into your world. You're running a business, or you're leading a team, or you're making a strategic decision that affects your company, your clients, your career. How often do you check whether your confidence in a decision is actually tracking the quality of that decision? Probably not very often. Because why would you? It feels fine. It felt clear. You had good reasons. Good ones, solid ones, you thought. But Conte et al. In 2023 showed that under a higher working memory load, confidence judgments become less precise and more prone to overconfidence. So on exactly the days when your system is most loaded, which for most of us is most of our days, your confidence is least trustworthy. And here is the cruel part. Gus et al. In 2026 found that complex problem solving, when people feel a sense of competent satisfaction, so that feeling of, I've got this, they actually reduce effort. They engage less deeply with the task, and their performance levels drop. So the feeling of confidence does not just fail to warn you, it actively makes things worse for you because it tells your brain that deep engagement is not needed. You've got this. Oh, relax. You can do that. And your brain listens and dials down the very system that would have caught the error. So what do you do with this? You cannot just tell yourself to be less confident. That is unfortunately not how it works. Confidence is not a dial you can turn down. It is generated automatically based on cues your brain processes below your conscious awareness. And you cannot willpower your way out of a structural brain limitation. But what you can change are the conditions. So the first thing to understand is that your internal confidence gauge is least reliable on your busiest and most loaded days. It's fine on your calm days, but not on your busy days. The days when you feel like you're firing on all cylinders because you're handling so many things at once. And those are the days when the gap between confidence and competence is the widest. So those are the days when you should trust your gut the least and your external systems the most. The second thing is, and you might know I really like that system, is to get the decision out of your head and onto paper. Not because paper is magical, but because when the decision is only in your head, your working memory is doing two jobs at once, holding the structure of the decision and evaluating it. And under stress, under load, something has to give. And what gives is the evaluation. When you write it down, you free up capacity for the part that actually matters, which is the quality of your thinking about it. And the third thing, and this matters more than people realize, is to build in a challenge step before you commit to a decision. So ask yourself, and it's important before the decision, so what is the strongest reason your decision might be wrong? Not, oh, maybe I can think of a reason. No, because your brain under load will quickly say, oh, it's fine. Be specific. If somebody I respect told me that this was the wrong call, what would their argument be? And that question forces your brain out of this fluency trap. It forces you to construct a counter-argument. And constructing a counter-argument activates exactly the evaluation processes that load suppresses. Now, none of this means your decisions are always wrong. Of course not. Most of the time, and for most decisions, the system works well enough. But well enough most of the time is not the same as reliable when it really matters for me. And the whole point of invisible degradation is that the moments when it matters most are also the moments when you're least likely to notice it happening. So here's the mental model I want to leave you with today. And this is really a core part of what I teach. And in this channel, your brain does not send an error message when your judgment, your decisions are impaired. There's no pop-up warning, no red light going on, no alarm. Your reasoning continues, your work and decisions continues, and your confidence goes on. But the quality underneath has shifted, and nothing in your subjective experience tells you that it has. This is invisible degradation. And once you see it, you start to notice it everywhere. In the decisions you made after a bad night's sleep, in the meeting at the end of a long day, in the strategy call where everything felt obvious and you had no reason to question it. So the goal here is not to become paranoid about every decision, but the goal is to build the habit of asking one question. Is my confidence in this decision based on the quality of my thinking, or is it based on how smooth and familiar it all feels? Because sometimes those are the same things, but sometimes they are very, very different. And your brain will unfortunately not tell you which one it is.